Broadcasting from Manhattan Beach and the World Wide Web, you're listening to CHSR, HealthyLife.net.
As a service to our listeners, this program is for general information and entertainment purposes only. CHSR, HealthyLife.net does not recommend, endorse, or object to the views, products, or topics expressed or discussed by show hosts or their guests. We suggest you always consult with your own personal, medical, financial, or legal advisor.
Bonjour, dear listeners. I greet you in Potawatomi, the language of my tribe. I am Randy Krakowski, an enrolled member of the Citizens Potawatomi Nation. I'm the host of this show, Indigenous Perspectives. This episode of Indigenous Perspectives originates not from my tribal homelands, but from Endakina, the unceded traditional territory of the Abenaki people, who for thousands of years were and still continue to be stewards of these lands in the state of Vermont in the northeastern United States and across the Canadian border in Quebec, Canada. In this show, I begin with a territorial acknowledgement because it's important to understand where we come from, both culturally and geographically, and also because this program focuses on understanding our roots in Mother Earth and connections with our ancestors. Our guest today is Chief Don Stevens of the Nulhegan Band of the Coosuk, Abenaki Nation of Vermont. We are going to explore the history of the Abenaki and, among other topics, look at how Native Americans have responded to their encounters with European culture, and in particular, the Christian religion. We will be looking at some of the different ways that Native Americans celebrate Christmas. But before we wade into those waters, let's back up and ask Chief Don Stevens why the land acknowledgement I opened with is so important. Chief Stevens, I opened the program, Indigenous Perspectives, and all of these broadcasts with a territorial acknowledgement. Can you help listeners to understand why such recognition is important?
Yes, thank you, Randy. The recognition is important per se to remind Europeans that the Abenaki and the native peoples were the original stewards of the land. And we say stewards because we did not look at ownership like Europeans do or dominion over. We were given the responsibility of being stewards for the land that the Creator and Gluskapi really created, who is the person who created the lands and the animals and those things in our culture, to provide for us. And if we took care of the land and provided for the land would provide for us. So we look at more stewardship than dominion over or ownership like Europeans do. So that's why when we do these acknowledgments, and you had said the unceded land, which kind of refers a little bit to ownership, it's a concept that Europeans understand about being the original inhabitants of a particular place. And native people in general, especially the Abenaki, are place-based people. So like Nulhegan means place of the wooden traps. Coosuk means pine, and Abenaki means people of the first dawn or the first light. So native peoples would know me as people of the wooden fish traps who live in the pines, who see the first light of day. So those acknowledgments to place, or that is who we are as a people, which may be different than other ethnic groups.
So, Don, along those lines, many of our listeners will have images of Indians on horses hunting buffalo in their minds as we speak. Can you reflect on how that image corresponds to the realities of the Abenaki and other Eastern tribes?
Yeah, I think it's all about context, because, the things you have described would be a stereotypical image of people on the East Coast. But if you were speaking about people maybe in the West, or people where buffalo roamed and they hunted buffalo historically, that might be an accurate depiction. But over here in the East, we did not have buffalo this far over. We maybe, in Neanderthal days or something like that, but the buffalo didn't come as far as the Atlantic over here on the East Coast. So for me, the Westerns and the TV shows and how Native people are depicted, they're trying to lump 500 nations into one image. That's why we have, when there's discussions about mascots or other type of things, it's really dehumanizing when people have an image of what Native people are supposed to look like, based on their exposure, and kind of condense everybody into one image, which we're a wide range of different people. Like, we mixed with French, we were Christianized by the Jesuits, so we have more of a white appearance than the Western type image of a Lakota person, or Navajo, or similar.
So along that very line of reasoning, I'm continually asked, and I'm sure you are, how should we be referred to? Very often we're referred to collectively as Indians. Some people refer to us as Native Americans, as indigenous peoples. In Canada, it's First Nations. What is your guidance and preference on this matter?
Well, again, I think if we're referred to in a good heart, it really doesn't matter in my mind. For instance, we were known in our language as Alnoba, which means human beings. We were human beings. So on the greater web of life, there was the animal people, the tree and plant people, and the human people. And because we could destroy things, we had a greater responsibility to not do that, but we work in harmony with the greater universe, or the greater different strands on the web of life, right? So we were known as human beings, Alnoba. Now, a European label that tries to label us, we in law, in statute, we are known as Indians. So federal law and state law, we are known as Indians. We have to carry an Indian status card. There's the Indian Arts and Crafts Act. So from a legal standpoint, we are Indians, and we are the only people that cannot self-declare, that have to prove who they are and be a part of a European status. So in that aspect, we are Indians. If you're saying we're indigenous to North America, then some people call us Native Americans to the North Americas, or indigenous. So, that fits too. Most of the time, First Nations are referred to as people in Canada, and we're not, even though we were First Nations here in the U.S., most people, when they talk about First Nations, they really look at it's more of a Canadian term, and then of course Aboriginal is more Australian, right? So for me, as long as it's said in a good heart and there's no disrespect meant, you could call me Indian, Native American, Indigenous, anything that your heart desires, because it is a European words. They're not our words. We are referred to as Nulhegan, place of the wooden fish traps, or we are referred to as Abenaki, people of the first light, or my name. So that's how I would respond.
I really appreciate your clarifying that, because an awful lot of people feel really uncomfortable trying to understand, how they should honor us and speak to us. It's a delicate matter for some. But along that very line, I may have slightly misled our listeners when I do the acknowledgement. I may have given the impression that the Abenaki have been here from time immemorial as opposed to many, many centuries. Like many Native Americans, your people have been very mobile and have had to adapt to different circumstances. Can you back up and give us a little bit of history on your creation story and maybe explain how your people are in some ways linked to my people, the Anishinaabe, who settled far west?
Well, I think that, first off, if you're doing a look from a historical perspective, archaeological perspective, there's been items and graves and goods found from 11,000 years ago. So we've been at least historically documented here in Vermont for at least 11,000, 12,000 years. So, and as you say, right, El Nomba, or I say, human being. So we are the direct descendants from those people, those original peoples. What they were called at that time, who knows how they referred to themselves. I mean, Nulhegan has lived on the Nulhegan River and the Clyde River and the waterways, which that's how we were referred to or how we were known by either Jesuits or other Europeans who first came, because we lived upon those places. And that's how we referred to ourselves. So when you say we've been here for not time immemorial, but I'd say at least 11,000 years, if not, and Nulhegan specifically, for hundreds of years, right? Because that's how we refer to ourselves. And yes, we were nomadic. We lived along the waterways during the summer, so we could plant our corn and we could eat fish and waterfowl and grow our crops. And since the waterways were our highways, we would use them for trade and for any other, travel. But of course, in the wintertime, we would move to our winter grounds, which are called the pines, right? Because that's where the big game were. So we were nomadic in a sense of allowing those resources to replenish. So we'd either be near water in the summer through fall, or be in the woods during the winter, and things could replenish. Now, going back to how we're related, is your people and ours are closely related, because at one point, I believe your people, as far as I know, were over on the East Coast, and when Europeans first came, I think they moved west to preserve, I think what I've been told is to preserve parts of our culture, which, we have wild rice here, you have wild rice there, and we have the shared beliefs, but different. For our creation stories is that it would take a long time to do the creation story, but in a nutshell, the Creator was walking across the universe with the eagle and the turtle, and they stopped to find a way to get a drink, and which they came upon the earth, and he allowed Toba the turtle to, not allowed, but put Toba in the water to swim. He was trying to find a place to sit, and he tried to create a place from under the earth, and all of this dirt fell from his hands onto the turtle's back, including one of our spiritual people, Guskapi, who fell from the sky, from the falling dirt from the Creator, and formed himself. Guskapi means one who formed himself from something, which landed on the earth and then populated the earth with trees and humans and other things. But like Adam, who was created by the dirt from that Jesus compiled dirt and made Adam, Guskapi was made from the dirt of the falling hands of the Creator. So there's a lot of similarities between Christianity and our culture, but it is different. Like, we didn't have such a thing called as a devil. We had something called the trickster, but there was no thing called the devil. So.
Thanks. But many of the listeners on this radio network, healthylife.net, focus on wellness and a wide range of topics on spirituality, on healing. How might those in the mainstream who are interested in such topics learn from indigenous people without appropriating what we do, if you want to tackle that subject of appropriation?
Yeah, I think without getting into specific ceremonies or particular practices, I think the way Native people look at things is they look at things as being connected to the source, so that you're never alone. So, and that's where a lot of problems have happened today, because more and more people turn away from the source and more towards being in a virtual world. They're not connected. And when I mean source, like, I am never alone because I am part of creation. I am part of that web of life, and I stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, and they stood on their ancestors before that. So we're connected to those generations previously, and we will be connected to those generations ahead of us. Like in our belief, the 7 directions, the 7 generations, which most people talk about, is that if you think about yourself as the center, you may know your mother, you will know your mother and your grandmother and maybe your great-grandmother. So those are the 3 generations behind. And the 3 generations ahead are being your children, your grandchildren, and maybe your great-grandchildren. That's your world. That's your influence. And those are the people that you are involved with. Many people look at 7 generations as 7 generations ahead, which, if you think about that, I don't know if I could affect somebody in 500 years from now, right? So it's always 3 behind, 3 ahead, and 1 in the middle. On top of that, I was saying being connected to your spiritual source, whatever that is, whether it be God, whether it be a higher power, or whether it be nature, or whatever that source is. You need to be connected to that. That makes you feel well and not alone. It could be bear is medicine to us, so we're very connected to the bear. We're very connected to the Creator. We're very connected to our eagle feathers, which is like holding the hand of our Creator. Those are the things we're connected to. We're also connected to our food sources, which is the environment, the earth, the plants, the animals who provide us food and medicine. So there's different connections to the source. Our computer is not a source. It's not a connection that it may help keep community during these COVID times, but it's not the thing. It's a tool, right? So I'm talking about connecting to the outside, the environment, your food sources, your spiritual source. Does that make sense?
Perfect. So many people that I talk to, and students very often, colleagues, friends, even family members, will read an inspirational book written by or about Native Americans, and they basically come to the conclusion that, oh, gee, I want to be like a Native American, or maybe I even want to really quietly, secretly be a Native American. The question is, how do we avoid this problem that they have in Europe, where, like, on a weekend, 10,000 people go into the forest and dress up as Indians and have a powwow and feel that they are Indians? Is that respectful? Is that problematic?
It is not respectful when you misappropriate someone's culture that is not your own, right? So that's why when we go back to people following a native path, it's okay to follow the philosophy and the way we view the world and the way we view our place in this world and where we live, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, people do that all the time. If you come across the farm that your grandfather owned, you don't refer to that as whoever lives there now. You always refer to it as your grandfather's farm or your grand-aunt's farm, and this is where they worked and where they had a swing, and you might have played there. You never look at it as who's there now. It's always that your view or recollection of that place, right? So when we say you should follow the path of being connected with the other strands of the web of life, that's a philosophy of ours. But I'm not saying that if you follow that, that's not misappropriation. That's just a way of viewing things as they are. However, if you decide to do a pipe ceremony, which you're not authorized to do or have no involvement in that to do a specific ceremony, well, then that's misappropriation. So I think as long as you're not doing the cultural practices that are done by a Native person or using something that's not belonging to you, then it's okay to follow a certain path. Just don't misappropriate something that's not yours. So dressing up in regalia is, if it's Native regalia, then that's not appropriate. But if it's regalia that you've designed that's meaningful to you and your culture, then by all means, do that. You understand? It's about taking something that is not yours.
You do such a great job explaining these issues, which for many in the Native American communities are raw nerves, and I love the way you do this with equanimity. Let me close up this session by saying that we've been discussing Abenaki history and culture with Chief Don Stevens. After a brief break, we will return and focus on one aspect of the encounter of indigenous cultures and colonizers. We're going to examine how indigenous people encountered, were shaped by, and also reshaped Christian religion that was part of colonization. Since this show is broadcast on Christmas Eve, we will use the holiday of Christmas as our window into contemporary indigenous life.
Citizen Potawatomi Nation's Cultural Heritage Center, located near Shawnee, Oklahoma, features 11 immersive galleries with digital and interactive exhibits. Visitors learn about the tribe's history from origin to modern days and gain an understanding of Citizen Potawatomi oral traditions and lifeways. Admission is always free. Open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit the Cultural Heritage Center on the web at PotawatomiHeritage.com.
Period poverty. If you don't know what it is, you should, because you can help. 1 in 4 American women struggle to purchase menstruation products this year, resulting in missed school and even loss of income. The Native American women's nonprofit, Queck Society, cares enough to give Native American students and communities their period products, and they do it across North America. Please help women with your time, donations, or supplies to maintain their dignity and celebrate their strength during moontime. Visit quecksociety.org. That's KWEK Society.org.
Listen up. The source for information and inspirational items about the struggle and wisdom of indigenous people is the Syracuse Cultural Workers. They are committed to peace, sustainability, social justice, feminism, and multiculturalism, and they create beautiful visual materials like calendars, T-shirts, cards, and more, including their greetings and thanks to the natural world accordion poster that offers daily grounding for our relationship to the earth and its many fellow beings. Get so many wonderful items. Go there now. SyracuseCulturalWorkers.com.
Randy Krakowski's book, Without Reservation, describes his spiritual awakening as a Native American. It's a powerful, life-changing story where Randy shares his journey into the realm of ancestral Native American connections and explores his encounters with Mother Earth. The book actually helps you how to reconnect with your ancestors to rekindle your access to ancestral wisdom and nature. Available in print, ebook, and audiobook format, Get Without Reservation by Randy Krakowski from all major booksellers. For more information, visit randykrakowski.com.
Feel you have no control over life? There's something you can do to make a difference for you, your family, and community. Stay positive and take a break from the dark side. Uplifting and enlightening. Listen to the positive side of podcasts. hrnradio.com.
back. In this segment of the show, I want to develop a hugely important theme that is applicable to all of us, indigenous or non-indigenous, particularly as we struggle to understand the mind-boggling changes that face us today and as we seek to find solutions to the formidable social, cultural, and environmental challenges we confront. How we can heal ourselves and the planet. How do we reinvent ourselves without cutting too many of the delicate threads that constitute the web of tradition enveloping and enriching our lives is the question. How do we hold on to the best of traditional belief and wisdom, knowledge and insights from both indigenous and mainstream cultures and combine this wisdom with insights offered by entirely new perspectives informed by new realities? That's a formidable question. Chief Don Stevens, let's get specific. Rather than addressing my questions in the abstract, let's get concrete. Do the Abenaki celebrate Christmas? If so, how do you connect your millennia-old traditional culture with the reality of this new arrival of Christianity?
Yeah, I think, Randy, the great thing about our people and our ancestry is that we are resilient people. We would take the best of things that were presented to us and make them our own. So, for instance, if when French Jesuits came and they would notice us celebrating our type of Christmas. When I say our type of Christmas, after we had a winter, our harvest festival after the harvest, we'd have a celebration. In winter, just before we went into really lockdown, because when you were in the wintertime, you were pretty much cooped up in longhouses with a multitude of families, and that's when you fix your baskets, create tools, make things, because it's a long winter, and that's when we would tell our stories. So right before everybody went in for the winter, there would be a feast and a celebration of getting through the harvest. And we would know what people might be lacking. So the community is very close-knit. So we would put out a blanket, a red blanket on the ground, and we would call a certain time that we would share this gift-giving or feast. And like if we knew one person needed an axe because he broke his over the summer and we had an extra one, we might put a axe on this blanket. Or if someone was short of corn flour or meat or some type of whatever they may be short of, we would put that on a blanket. And because everybody knew each other and what their needs were, we wouldn't take that off the blanket. We would allow the person who was short on those things to take it. Because in our culture, in order to get something, you have to give something. So this is the one time of year that you could pick something off this blanket and you weren't obligated to indebted to that person who gave it to you, because everybody who participated put something on the blanket. So it was like just a gift where you reach in and you pick something you need, and there's no obligation to anybody else. It was a really blessing, which is sort of what we do at Christmas time, where people have a gift and they give it with no strings attached. And of course, Coosuk were people of the pines, so the pine tree related to us. And at what point, like with Christianity, there's 400 years of Christianity, of Christianization of Native people, right? At what point does it become part of your culture or part of your lineage? Because we also walk in two worlds. Like we married into the French married into us. And we celebrated both kind of Christmas and our traditional way of looking at gift-giving for the winter. And because of our belief systems about being Christianized, they weren't the same, but we could relate enough to the Christian teachings so that way it was an easy melding of cultures and of celebrations. Does that make
Fantastic example. I'm going to ask Carolyn, our other guest, to join us now and talk a little bit about her awakening to Native American spirituality at Christmas time from a more mainstream perspective. Carolyn, please join.
Thanks. Well, in my childhood, we celebrated Christmas in the typical American way, tree and presents. Starting December 1st each year, we also had an Advent calendar made of cardboard with little numbered doors counting up to Christmas. We opened one each day. Behind each door was some image related to the biblical Christmas story. While the Advent calendar was always fun, what meant the most to me was always the family nativity scene, or creche, figures out of the story of the birth of Jesus, sort of like a dollhouse, but much more serious. When I was really little, we just had a baby Jesus, a little wooden trough with some straw in it for his bed, Mary, his mother, an ox, and a donkey. Year after year, we added more figures. Joseph, Mary's husband, shepherds and sheep, camel, and some wise men. I loved the creche and got to set it up each year. Making the story real with pretend figures was part of the way it came alive for me. Fast forward quite a few decades, I'm now living in Vermont with Randy. Our old cardboard Advent calendar disintegrated. Randy made one, a large, 6-foot, 2-meter, 3-dimensional display combining an Advent calendar and creche scene. Behind each door is a figure about 5 inches tall. These include not only the traditional Jesus, Mary, Joseph, shepherds, kings, angels, but also figures illustrating real-life people with different occupations, living in Roman-occupied Palestine at the time of Jesus' birth. Then, around the time of the awakenings that he discusses in his book, Randy realized that indigenous people were missing from his beloved Advent calendar scene. None of our creche figures had any connection with native life. Were the indigenous people being ignored in our own household? Oh, no. So he found some figures of Indians, some carrying signs of their crafts like pottery bowls, baskets, or beaded head coverings, and a wolf on a larger scale than any of the others, howling at the moon with lifted head.
So for 3 years, these Native American figures were off on the side of our creche scene. They were basically uninvited outsiders to anyone looking at it. Then it struck me, we're celebrating Christmas on the unceded Native American lands, and indigenous people who had 15,000 or more years old culture and spiritual traditions were marginalized by a much newer 1,500-year-old transplanted Christian culture. And I asked myself, does this accurately represent what really happened? And the answer was no. So what we did, and what we'll discuss on future programs, is we tried to visually reshape this narrative that we had created in our own house. And now our indigenous visitors are going to be moved to the center of our creche scene. And they will be bearing gifts like the Magi Kings, but there won't be material gifts. There'll be gifts of spiritual insight and wisdom about how to share connections with Mother Earth. So, after a brief break, we're going to look at another innovation and talk about a biblical Christmas story and our family Advent calendar and nativity scene. And we're going to bring Don back into the discussion because I'm really curious to know how he's reacting to what he's hearing from another tribal member. Stay tuned.
Located near Shawnee, Oklahoma, Citizen Potawatomi Nation is Potawatomi County's largest employer with a rich history and culture as a sovereign Native nation. Learn more about CPN by visiting its website, which includes information on services for members, tribal enterprises, government and constitution, the newspaper, and much more. All at Potawatomi.org. That's Potawatomi.org.
Randy Krakowski's book, Without Reservation, describes his spiritual awakening as a Native American. It's a powerful, life-changing story where Randy shares his journey into the realm of ancestral Native American connections and explores his encounters with Mother Earth. The book actually helps you how to reconnect with your ancestors to rekindle your access to ancestral wisdom and nature. Available in print, ebook, and audiobook format, Get Without Reservation by Randy Krakowski from all major booksellers. For more information, visit randykrakowski.com.
Since 1975, Inner Traditions has been publishing books for the healing and spiritual journey. Their mission is to rediscover, preserve, and protect these spiritual traditions of the world so that humanity will forever have the tools to create a better future that will celebrate and heal the earth. Inner Traditions books, card decks, and other products are available wherever books, ebooks, and audiobooks are sold. Or visit InnerTradition.com's online bookstore. And while you're there, sign up for their free newsletter to receive special offers. That's InnerTraditions.com.
Period poverty. If you don't know what it is, you should, because you can help. 1 in 4 American women struggle to purchase menstruation products this year, resulting in missed school and even loss of income. The Native American women's nonprofit, Queck Society, cares enough to give Native American students and communities their period products, and they do it across North America. Please help women with your time, donations, or supplies to maintain their dignity and celebrate their strength during moon time. Visit quecksociety.org. That's KWEK Society.org.
Don't get angry. Anger is a negative emotion that suppresses your immune system that may cause health problems. Make a positive difference by working together to protect and support your family, friends, and community. Take a break from the dark side. Uplifting and enlightening. Listen to the positive side of podcasts. HRNradio.com.
I've been talking with one of our guests today, Carolyn Schmidt, about how our traditional family Christmas nativity scene morphed into a visual representation recognizing and including Native American presence and acknowledging what Native Americans did to shape a religion that's often portrayed in history with a one-sided story about overwhelming influence on Indians. Listeners might be wondering about the liberties our household is taking by reformulating the traditional biblical Christmas story and turning it into a modern parable. In this segment, we're going to look at how a mainstream author in the New World also reshaped the traditional Christmas story. Carolyn, can you talk a bit about this?
Well, this goes even further than including Indians in our crush scene. We also included the fourth wise man. This is an interesting new figure. He's never mentioned in the Christian Bible. He completely missed the photo op. He never got to the place where Jesus was born in time. He doesn't appear on any Christmas cards. But So who is he? I thought there were supposed to be just three. You have to explain to us why this fourth guy pops up. Well, that's by tradition over the centuries. The Christian's New Testament just gives the bare outline. Wise men coming from the east, following a star, finding the infant Son of God in a makeshift crib in an animal barn. They kneel to him and give him their gifts. This traditional story has been embellished and dramatized, establishing the three wise men, or three kings, as recognizable images of gift-giving worshipers. But a story called The Other Wise Man, written in 1895 by an American, Henry Van Dyke, imagines a different possibility. There is a fourth wise man who wanted to join in the search for the new Savior, but never found him. He took a different route. He was lost to history and to popular tradition. Here's a summary. Artaban is a wealthy Persian who follows the Zoroastrian religion of his culture. That is, a belief in the constant struggle between the forces of goodness and evil, constant striving by people to seek for the good, often portrayed as a source of light. Like many Zoroastrians, he was knowledgeable of the sciences of his time, especially astronomy. He decides to join 3 other fellow seekers on the trip to the place they have calculated the special event, the birth of the Son of God, would happen. So Artaban sells all his property, turning his wealth into 3 jewels, which he can carry with him. They're going to be his gifts to the newborn Son of God. He's supposed to travel to meet his friends, but he stops to help a man who is dying for lack of food and water. He misses the planned departure with his friends and their well-laden camel caravan of provisions. So he keeps on by himself. He finally gets to Bethlehem. He finds a sort of deserted town. He finds one woman there saying that the family he's looking for had left the village suddenly, heading into Egypt. He realizes that he's going to have to extend his journey. But what happens is this woman with a small baby is very kind. She gives him a meal, but suddenly there's an intrusion. There's the noise of all kinds of confusion and uproar, and soldiers are coming into the town. There are swords. There's screaming. The soldiers are killing all the infant children on the order of the ruler of Palestine, who was trying to kill any child that might be the new king. So I'll read just a little bit from the story itself. The soldiers are coming down the street. The young woman with the little baby is hiding in the back of her cottage, and Artaban confronts the captain, and it says, Artaban's face was as calm as though he were watching the stars, and in his eyes there burned that steady radiance before which even the half-tamed lunging leopard shrinks. He said in a low voice, "I am all alone in this place, and I am waiting to give this jewel to the prudent captain who will leave me in peace." He showed the captain his ruby. The captain was amazed at the splendor of the gem. The pupils of his eyes expanded with desire. Lines of greed wrinkled around his lips. He stretched out his hand and took the ruby. "March on," he cried to his men. "There is no child here." The clamor and clang of arms passed down the street. Artaban re-entered the cottage. He turned his face to the east and prayed, "God of truth, forgive my sin. I have said something that is not, to save the life of a child. And my ruby is gone. I have spent for man that which was meant for God. Shall I ever be worthy to see the face of the king?" That's the end of the quotation. So Artaban spends 33 years searching for the Son of God, and he keeps running into situations where he steps in to help. As he's dying, he feels he's failed, but he has a vision of the Son of God telling him that his deeds, his actions in caring for the others, were the greatest gifts that anyone could have given. So Artaban dies with validation for the decisions he made along the way, to place good deeds in the here and now over his own personal spiritual quest. The deeds he did actually fulfilled his goal. This story is available in book form and also on the Internet. Just do an Internet search for The Other Wise Man, Project Gutenberg.
So when we first heard this story, I have to say it knocked us over. And now we're beginning to incorporate it into our Christmas celebration with the Indians. And I'm beginning to recognize that the message that Artaban embodies is in many ways so much like the blanket ceremony that Chief Stevens described, where we share what we have with those in need. Don, can you comment on this? This is probably a new story for you. Have you heard this variation on the Christian Christmas story?
No, I have not. I have not heard this. And just to explain, because we were Christianized by Jesuits, it was certain things were able to be easily translated. In other words, we believe in a creator, and so doesn't Christianity. You know, we believe in Coosuk, who was made of dirt from the falling hands of the creator, like Adam was. We believe in the spirit of the woods. We call him Yeti, Bigfoot, the big hairy man. Christians may call them St. Francis. I think he was in charge of the animals and plants in the Christian culture. So there are a lot of crossovers so we could understand what those things were. We really didn't get into, I think, the nativity section from a native perspective, at least the Abenaki didn't. We, however, by intermarrying with the French and being Christianized, and if you have French European lineage as well as Abenaki and native culture, you have to celebrate both in order to be a whole person. So you don't just celebrate native culture and you don't just celebrate French culture. You kind of meld the two in a way that is acceptable within your own cultural, traditional family. So, for instance, we celebrated Christmas and had presents and decorated a tree as well, but we also had the blanket that we put the gifts on, and that we would have people that would take off from those. So it was the melding of two to celebrate the whole persons. But we didn't per se get into the wise men and the nativity scene. It was part of the Christmas story, but we looked at it in a more broader sense, if that makes
thanks.
If I'm explaining myself right.
Thanks for explaining that. And again, the point we have in introducing this story is really a broad one, not to advocate that other people should adopt it, but to point out that we can reinvent ourselves by building on the best threads of tradition and reweaving them together where they're frayed, and we can make those stories work for ourselves. So after the next break, I think we're going to come back and talk about some other ways that Native Americans have been creative and inventive, and most importantly, contributed to adding value to what Christianity and other spiritual traditions have to offer in the modern world. Stay tuned.
Citizen Potawatomi Nation's Cultural Heritage Center, located near Shawnee, Oklahoma, features 11 immersive galleries with digital and interactive exhibits. Visitors learn about the tribe's history from origin to modern days and gain an understanding of citizen Potawatomi oral traditions and lifeways. Admission is always free. Open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Visit the Cultural Heritage Center on the web at PotawatomiHeritage.com.
Period poverty. If you don't know what it is, you should, because you can help. 1 in 4 American women struggle to purchase menstruation products this year, resulting in missed school and even loss of income. The Native American women's nonprofit, Queck Society, cares enough to give Native American students and communities their period products, and they do it across North America. Please help women with your time, donations, or supplies to maintain their dignity and celebrate their strength during moon time. Visit quecksociety.org. That's KWEK Society.org.
Listen up. The source for information and inspirational items about the struggle and wisdom of indigenous people is the Syracuse Cultural Workers. They are committed to peace, sustainability, social justice, feminism, and multiculturalism, and they create beautiful visual materials like calendars, t-shirts, cards, and more, including their Greetings and Thanks to the Natural World accordion poster that offers daily grounding for our relationship to the earth and its many fellow beings. Get so many wonderful items. Go there now. SyracuseCulturalWorkers.com.
Randy Krakowski's book, Without Reservation, describes his spiritual awakening as a Native American. It's a powerful, life-changing story where Randy shares his journey into the realm of ancestral Native American connections and explores his encounters with Mother Earth. The book actually helps you how to reconnect with your ancestors to rekindle your access to ancestral wisdom and nature. Available in print, ebook, and audiobook format. Get Without Reservation by Randy Krakowski from all major booksellers. For more information, visit randykrakowski.com.
Where positive people and radio unite. HealthyLife.net.
Welcome back to the final segment of Indigenous Perspectives. Perhaps like the fourth Magi King Artaban, you're feeling that our program has left you stranded in the desert far from home. You might be asking why a program about Indigenous perspectives has involved a story so geographically and culturally remote. This is undoubtedly how many Indigenous people in the New World must have felt when colonists and missionaries started telling them the stories about their Creator and a person called Jesus. Native Americans, attempting to build bridges of understanding, responded by telling the colonists and missionaries their own creation stories of Turtle Island and explaining about indigenous spiritual traditions. For the last 500 years, both sides in this cultural encounter have been struggling to find common ground, to reconcile sometimes conflicting viewpoints, and to share wisdom. In our small household here in the small snowy forests of Vermont, on the lands of Endakina, as we have shown you, we're still creating and recreating our own Christmas narrative. This exploration, like so much that has occurred under our roof in recent years, is a journey homeward, a rediscovery of our ancestral roots, and ultimately an act of reconnecting with our ancestors. It's my Potawatomi grandfather and his grandfather, caught up in the spiritual and political turmoil of their times, who have repeatedly guided me homeward. The fact was made evident when we came across my grandfather's letters from France, where he was a soldier in World War I, and in particular, his letters of 1918. With hindsight of historical knowledge, we know that this was a time that was the beginning of peacemaking. But for my grandfather and others in France, it was by no means certain that the ceasefire would hold. He writes with real anxiety about the possibility that fighting could break out again at any moment. In the midst of this, my grandfather did something extraordinary. He organized a Christmas dinner for his regiment of ambulance drivers and truck drivers. Somehow, in the French countryside, he managed to find a turkey and have a feast, and he typed up a menu that he placed at each place setting at the table in their army barracks. We managed to get a copy of that menu. He included it in his letter. So a few years ago, for the final Christmas dinner we shared with my 90-plus-year-old mother, we put this menu at each place setting, and then we did something quintessentially Native American. We put out an ancestor plate. It's always served first. An ancestor plate is an acknowledgement of gratitude for the gifts and sacrifices of our ancestors. Tomorrow, on Christmas Day, we will do the same thing once again. We will put out an ancestor plate, and we will feed our ancestors first. Don, do you have this kind of tradition among the Abenaki? How do you connect with your ancestors, or do you connect with them at holidays?
Well, yes, Randy, we do it at holidays, but we actually connect with them all year round. I mean, when we gather as a group and anytime we feast, we do a feast song to ask the ancestors to come and join us. And then we will have a child go around and put something of the food on the plate, and which connects our young to our old. and we will have them place it on the table because our ancestors eat with us. They don't eat anywhere else. We're inviting them to our feast and to be at our table, and we're honoring the choices they made to allow us to be able to survive. So we do that all of the time, not just on holidays. So it's a cultural practice that we do.
It's really a beautiful story, Don. Thanks for sharing, because this year in particular, with COVID and social isolation, when families aren't getting together, many of us, as in our household, will be eating alone, and others won't be at the table. But for us, this year, I think we're going to feel more connected than ever in some strange ways. We'll look out the window in the snowy forest and feel connected to Clay Wolf and Coosuk, the owl, the winged ones at the bird feeder. And as you said, it's a community, and it's a community not just of those currently with us, but those who've walked on. And I love the way you so gently describe the fact that we are embraced by an animate world and the spirits of our ancestors. This, I think, for listeners, is the great gift that Native Americans bring to this culture.
Yeah, and I think personally with us, at least I'm only speaking on our behalf of our culture, and what we do is that death to us is a transition. There is a physical loss of the body, but the spirit is always with you, and they walk among you at all times. You may not be able to see them, but they're the things that guide you if you pay attention and you open your ears, your heart, and your mind, and you ask for that help. That is what you feel as intuition. So if you ask them for guidance to do this, if it feels right, they're trying to guide you. If it feels wrong, they're trying to tell you, don't go that way. To us, that's what the ancestors are guiding you through, that intuition, and trying to help you move forward. So they're always around. So we're always never alone. So from a spiritual sense, we are always with our community, our people, our ancestors. Now, from a physical standpoint, for people who are living still, those are where the community gatherings are good, and that's how we stay in touch either now with COVID, by phone, by social distancing, trying to get together, or through the virtual world where we can still see them. But we are still with our community, and that's what keeps us moving forward. And why we embrace the Christianity was so well is because our mind is more set that the community is more important than one person. So a lot of us go in the military, as you spoke of, because we understand that the greater good is better than the individual. So we work as a communal people. We open our hearts like we did with the first people that came to this new world. When they were starving, we taught them how to grow food, the Europeans, so they would survive. Obviously we know other things that happened after that, but we were generous and kind by trying to keep them alive until they started taking things from us. So we are all about trying to be the best of ourselves, because we've always been community-oriented, whether spiritually or physically.
Thank you so much for doing such an eloquent job and helping our listeners to understand what it's like to be a Native American. I want to say to our listeners, miigwech, for your listening. I hope that this broadcast has given you time and space to reconnect with your roots in Mother Earth and with your ancestral roots. Before your busy day distracts you from this moment, I encourage you to take a few minutes to reach out and feel the presence of living flora and fauna, and perhaps even that of ancestors. Allow yourself to touch their presence, capture that moment, and hold on to it. And if you might, write to me and let me know about your experience. I can be reached at randykrakowski@hushmail.com or through my website at randykrakowski.com. Don, miigwech so much. Thank you so much for your input. Take care.
Adio, Nana Maze, Randy. Until we see each other again.